Welcome to my YouTube channel, Mukunda Stuti channel. I am Gopinath Rao. Today I am presenting before you a very universal, important law that is actually underrated and underutilized. I am talking about law of conservation. You have studied law of conservation of mass, you have studied law of conservation of energy, you have studied law of conservation of momentum. What does this law of conservation of mass says? In a chemical reaction, in an isolated system, the mass of the reactants is equal to mass of the products, and in a chemical reaction, mass is neither created nor is it destroyed. It changes from
start.
I am Gopinath Rao. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Mukunda Stuti channel. I am here to today explain you a very important universal law that is called law of conservation. You all have studied. It is actually most underrated, underutilized. Actually, this is a universal law. It is applicable to anywhere, in any field of science. But it is only confined to physics and chemistry so far. Let us study law of conservation of mass. What does it say? The law of conservation of mass says in an isolated system, in a chemical reaction, the mass of reactants is equal to the mass of products, and in a chemical reaction, mass is neither created nor is it destroyed. It changes from one form to another, that is from reactant to product. In the second case, law of conservation of energy. Here again, energy can neither be created nor it can be destroyed. It changes from one form to another. Suppose a dynamite explodes. Chemical energy is changed into kinetic energy, and if you observe it, the kinetic energy and the chemical energy are equal and same, actually equal in this one units. Chemical energy units, if you say, it is equal to kinetic energy. Now let us think of law of conservation of momentum. When a collision occurs between two objects, say in a carom board, when a striker hits a coin, the momentum before the striker hits or before the collision happens and the momentum after the collision is both are equal and same. The objects before collision is equal, the total momentum of the objects before collision is equal to the total momentum of the objects after the collision. And now, why I am concentrating on the equal opposites here. There are two equal opposites here. You can see the words mass of reactants and mass of products. In a chemical, in any law of conservation, you find that equal opposites come into play. Mass of reactants and mass of products. Here again, there are two equals. The chemical energy is getting changed into kinetic energy. The chemical energy, the quantity of chemical energy is equal to quantity of kinetic energy. And let us think of the third law, law of conservation of momentum. Here again there are two equals. The total momentum before collision and total momentum after collision. You are seeing that there are two distinct equals in this law. If they are not equal, the conservation will not happen. And I mean the conservation has no, we cannot say that it is conserved. Mass is conserved. For mass to get conserved, you must have equals. Mass of reactant must be equal to mass of products. If they are not equal, the concept of conservation totally fails. Here again, if these two are equal, when chemical energy is changed into kinetic energy, and if kinetic energy and chemical energy are different or they are not equal, what will happen? You will not get this conservation concept right. Thirdly, here again in the case of law of conservation of momentum, you observe that total momentum before collision must be equal to total momentum after collision. Then only we can say that it is law of conservation. Then only we say that momentum is conserved. Otherwise, what will happen? We cannot say that it is not, it is conserved. What we are out to is there are equal opposites. You may say opposites, that is left to the vision of yours, but what I say is there are two equals here. You notice that there are equals, and there are so many equals in life. In our day-to-day life we come across so many equals. In so many cases we find that this law of conservation comes into play. Let me start with others. A machinery by paying rupees 1 lakh rupees. Now in this case the machinery account is debited and bank account or the cash account, as the case may be, is credited. You notice that both the machinery account is debited by rupees 1 lakh. Machinery account is debited by rupees 1 lakh and cash account or the bank account, as the case may be. If it is paid through bank, bank account is credited, or otherwise if it is cash is paid, cash account is credited with rupees 1 lakh. What we observe is that there are two distinct equal and opposite entries, debit and credit, and both are equal in nature. So in such a case, what we can observe that in a financial transaction, in any financial transaction, wealth changes from one form to another, and wealth is neither created nor is it destroyed. It just changes from one form to another. This is the underlying principle of double entry bookkeeping. In any bookkeeping, double entry bookkeeping, you can see any financial transaction, there will be two aspects of the transaction. One aspect is called debit, the other one is credit. One account is debited, the other account is credited. One account is debited, the other account is credited, and with equal amounts. The amounts being equal. You cannot have different amounts for different transactions like that. This is very important concept. This leads us to one important thing called law of conservation of wealth. You can say this leads us to one important concept called law of conservation of wealth. Now you have understood that when we observe or view law of conservation as law of equal opposites, you find that double entry bookkeeping is one such example, and you will come to know that this leads to double entry bookkeeping. The concept leads us to law of conservation of wealth, and this is the sum and substance of double entry bookkeeping. Based on this law of conservation of wealth only, double entry bookkeeping is established and it is proven method of accounting. It is a foolproof method. Now I said, as I said, law of conservation is universal in nature. It not only applies to physics and chemistry, it also has got applications in double entry bookkeeping. Now, the major application of law of conservation is in the field of economics. In economics, for every step we get the application of law of conservation. In every topic you find the application of law of conservation. Without law of conservation, economics is zero, I could say. Now, let us study what is that makes law of conservation applicable to economics, and what are the equal opposites in economics that we study. Now think of economic activities. Think of economic activities. First that comes to our mind is selling. Selling is an economic activity. Now, I want to sell a commodity. If there are no buyers, does the selling happen? Do you think selling happens without a buyer? No, for selling to happen, a buyer is a necessity. Selling and buying. Without a person buying a commodity, one cannot sell the commodity. For a commodity to be sold, there must be a buyer. For a buyer to buy a commodity, there must be a seller. Suppose if I buy a pen for ₹100, I pay ₹100 and buy a pen. My money is converted into pen. Just like we have studied in law of conservation of energy, and here money is converted into pen. What happens to the seller? This is for buyer. This is for buyer. When I pay ₹100 and buy a pen, the seller sells one pen and gets rupees . The seller gets ₹100 in lieu of one pen he has sold. For me, ₹100 becomes a pen. If you consider this, seller and buyer, both the reactions are equal and opposite. ₹100 is getting changed into pen, pen is getting changed into ₹100. Do you not notice that they both are equal and opposite? When I sell a pen, when I buy a pen for ₹100, the seller must receive 100 only. He cannot receive 90 or he cannot receive 110. He must receive, when I am paying him ₹100, he must get 100 only. When he is selling one pen, I must get only one pen. I cannot get two pens. That is both the reactions here. Pen into money into pen and pen into money. You can say commodity into money. Commodity is changed into money and money is changed into commodity. In the case of selling, commodity changes into money. In case of buying, money changes into commodity. Both are equal and opposite. Now, based on this, we can say that in an economic activity of selling and buying, wealth is neither created nor is it destroyed. It is changed from one form to another. That is from pen to money and money to pen. It changes from one form to another, but it is neither created nor destroyed. Let us take some more examples of economic activities where such a change of wealth takes place. Now consider, I have plenty of liquidity, I have a lot of money. I go to a bank and deposit money in a bank. Think that I deposit ₹1 lakh cash in a bank. I deposit ₹1 lakh in a bank. I invest money in the form of fixed deposit. My liquidity is changed into investment or deposit. You may call it as investment, you may call it as deposit. My liquidity or money, you may call it as money or you may call it as liquidity. My liquidity is changed into investment. What happens to the banker? For the banker, reverse thing happens. His investment is changed into money. For the banker, investment is changed into money. For me, liquidity or money is changed into investment. Again here, these two transactions are equal and opposite. Again I want to say, in an economic activity of investment, wealth is neither created, wealth is not lost. Wealth changes from liquidity to investment and investment to liquidity. Okay. Now think of the third economic activity, say employment. Employment is an important economic activity as by everyone accepts it. In employment, what happens? In employment, when I am employed in a firm, my human resource is changed into salary. The human resource I put in my firm, in my company, in my employment, human resource gets changed into salary. For the employer, this is for employee. This is for employee. For the employer, we notice that the wages or salary, whatever it may be, wages or salary that he pays is changed into human resource. For an employee, human resource gets changed into salary. For the employer, wages and salary get changed into human resources. Again here, these two are equal and opposites. As I said, they are equal opposites. There is no creation of wealth here. There is no destruction of wealth here. Wealth is neither created nor is it destroyed in an economic activity of employment. This is very, very important. In any economic activity, where for employee, his human resource is changed into salary or wages, whatever we may call, and for the employer, wages or salary that he pays gets changed into human resources, or you can say human resources or labor, whatever you may call. Here again, there is no creation of wealth. There is neither creation nor destruction of wealth. Okay. Let us see the relationship of tenant and suppose I want to hire a house. There must be a landlord who should offer me the house on rent. Then only I can hire a house. For the tenant, the rent he pays, the rent or you can say money he pays gets changed into utility of the house, utility of the building or asset, or you can say for the specific period. When I pay money as rent, I get utility of the house or the building, whatever it may be the case, or land for that specific period, say 1 month or 2 months or anything for that matter, agreed period for me. What happens to the landlord? For the landlord, utility of the house is changed into, this is for tenant. And for the landlord, utility of the house is changed into money or rent. Here again there are two distinct equals and opposites. You get equal opposites. Here again I can say that in the process of in an economic activity of hiring or hiring out, then wealth is not created, wealth is not destroyed. Wealth changes from rent to utility of the house, and utility of the house conversely changes into money or rent. Wealth is neither created, wealth is not destroyed. Wealth changes from one form to another in this economic activity. Now I can go on explaining so many other economic activities. The list is endless. The list is endless. You can think of so many other economic activities, and you find that every economic activity has an equal and opposite activity. Now I must say that every economic activity, just like Newton's third law of motion. Remember what Newton's third law of motion says. Newton's third law of motion says every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Every economic activity has an equal and opposite activity. And in any economic activity, wealth is neither created, wealth is nor is it destroyed. Wealth changes from one form to another. This is what we are going to observe is we are arriving at law of conservation of wealth. As I said, you are in the economics accountancy part, in double entry bookkeeping part, debits are equal to credits, and in a financial transaction, wealth is not created, wealth is not destroyed. Here again, in economics also, in any economic activity, wealth is neither created nor is it destroyed. In any economic activity, every economic activity has an equal and opposite activity. Therefore, wealth is neither created nor is it destroyed. Wealth changes from one form to another. This is a very important concept of law of conservation of wealth, and this forms the sum and substance of entire economics. Entire economics is based on this concept called law of conservation. There are so many examples in economics. There are so many other laws also that are there, and actually economics economics is wrongly classified as social science. Actually, it should have been studied on the lines of physics and chemistry. It would have given credibility and accountability. Actually, economics would have become more accountable to social problems, economic problems, the global recession and all. You could have, anyway. Now there are so many other theories also in economics that are online with law of conservation. Let me give you one example. In economists say that income is equal to expenditure plus savings. Here again we notice that this is one part and this is the other part. They are equals. We come across equals in this equation also. Income is equal to expenditure plus savings. This is a very proven thing in economics, and this again goes to say that law of conservation applies. Here again, you cannot have more income than expenditure and savings. Expenditures and saving cannot be more than income. Income is equal to expenditure plus savings. This again goes to prove law of conservation. Now there are some other theories also. Like in economics you find quantity theory of money. Quantity theory of money. Many economists say that this theory is not correct. But I say that this theory that is proposed by classic economics is 100% correct, and it is based on law of conservation of wealth. Let us see, at any given point of time, quantity of money in circulation, quantity of money in circulation is equal to value of goods and services. Here again there are two equals, goods and services and quantity of money. If quantity of money increases, value of goods and services also correspondingly increases. If goods and services increase, value of money also increases. That is, if goods and services increase without corresponding increase in the quantity of money, then what will happen? Prices drop. And in case of quantity of money, if quantity of money increases without corresponding increase in goods and services, according to law of conservation, they being equal, the value of goods and services also increases with increase in the quantity of money. With the increase in value of goods and services, price drop. With the increase in quantity of money, prices increase. This is again based on law of conservation. Unfortunately, economists have different opinion about this quantity theory of money. Actually, this is the most proven and it is most perfect, actually I would say, law based on law of conservation. There are so many other laws also in economics that fulfill this law of conservation of wealth, the concept of law of conservation of wealth. I will deal it in next class.